we want to strengthen the right back position. Part of the discussion will be with the academy team, under 23s, and saying, have we got anybody who's going to be out of fitness bill in the next 6, 12, 18 months? If the answer is yes, then you make an educated guess as to whether that person could come through. Alternatively, your scouting network will have come up with 2, maybe 3 options to try and purchase. And all of those options are based on evidence of scouting, watching, but also knowing the individual's position, how much time is left on their contract at their existing club, what sort of wage they're on, and what sort of wage they might be looking for, and whether they fit the style and also the attitude and mentality of player that you're looking at. So you're not looking at Flash Harry who goes clubbing every week or who maybe have a rumoured drug habit or whatever. Those stories get around football very, very quickly. So you're looking for tried and tested people. So what then happens, the group then go to Daniel. Daniel has already set a budget as to what is available and says, okay, can you get me A or B or C? And leave the negotiation down to Daniel and his team. So that's where Jose's agents and everybody else come out of the game, and Daniel then gets involved. And then it's really a business case to be able to work out whether he can afford to buy A for 45 million or B for 30 or C for 15. You may think that C is a better long-term option. He's a 22-year-old. His team's getting relegated this year. We might be able to pick him up for 20 million. His wages aren't that high, but he's a brilliant young prospect. He's an England registered player. So you weigh that up against option B, who may be a 27-year-old Frenchman, who we know has got 1 year left of his contract. He's on big wages now. He might take a cut. Depends. Or do you go for option A, who's the Galactico? Who probably wouldn't fit in with your team ethos. So Daniel then does that negotiation. Once they got to a position between A or B or C and are almost there to sign, it's a matter of this is what's happening. So I've heard, but I don't know, I've heard that there are Daniel purchases where Daniel will go and buy X on the recommendation of X, Y and Z. And I think I also heard, again, I've got no reason to believe it, but I've got no proof of it, that certain players were then imposed on Pochettino, and that caused some friction. Now, whether that is the case or not, I don't know. But that's the way, in theory, that it works. Now, as far as how much finance is available, in the past, Daniel has always said to us when we asked the question, there is a kitty, there is a transfer kitty available. I'm clearly not going to tell you what that is because it's a negotiating point. But that kitty can be added to by the sale of players. And the sale of players is always down to various different things. Does the player want to go? Or is anybody else interested in him? One of the issues back in Pochettino's time was trying to offload players who were on very good contracts and nobody came in for. You would have thought that for guys like Christian Eriksen, Danny Rose, I think, was in that position as well. People would be knocking the door down.
And Toby as well.
And Toby as well.
Yeah.
So
I'm worried about dealing with Daniel though when it comes to our players. He's a tough negotiator, and they think, well, I'm not going to bother because he's going to. We've got a price for, say, Toby.
But is that not just like we don't know that's the case? I mean, what that is there's a lot of media talk and public talk. He's a businessman, so he wants to get the best for the club, for the business, but this whole, like, there's a lot of stuff that we kind of buy into, that this gets put into the public domain, that we've no way of knowing. I mean, Pete's just said that we don't know. We don't know what the transfer kit is, but yet still every in the know on social media will tell you, oh, this year we've got that amount of money. We've only got like 20 million to spend on transfers unless we sell the whole squad. So, it's just bollocks that they make up that people jump onto and feed off of because it kind of suits the agenda that they want. So that when for example, a transfer doesn't go through, they go, oh, blood, Levy again, haggling over, £1.50 just because he's a tough negotiator. But we don't know that. We're not in the, we're not in those negotiating rooms, where like the other chairman might go, do you know what, actually, I don't particularly want to sell to you, so I'm going to whack another 20 million on top anyway. I didn't really want to sell the player, so I'm going to add another 10 million at the last minute.
Well, it's no secret of the fact that Ferguson said, I'm never going to deal with that guy again. That's a quote from his autobiography. I cannot really see us even thinking about trying to do anything, although I think things have got a little bit better over the years with West Ham. There was some speculation, I think, about Declan Rice being a potential target. Whether they would deal with us again, I really have my doubts. I don't think Chelsea are too enamoured with us either, to be honest.
But some of those like that kind of suits me. That kind of suits me. I don't want us to, I don't want us to sell to Chelsea. I mean, generally we're in the position where we were, the club that would be losing players to. I mean, West Ham obviously we would take players from them, but generally we would be losing players to the likes of Chelsea and Man United's of this world. So I'm quite happy if he's alienated them to the extent that they don't want to do business with us, because it means that potentially we won't be losing players when we're on the cusp of something, and all of a sudden Man United are in a bit of a revival.
About whether we would take Giroud as an option to give us a second out and also give us some cover. If we didn't regain full match fitness, and it's an area I think we've still got to look at. Although Jose will probably turn around and say, you look at those last two results in the pace we've got up front, do we really need another striker? Well, only your medical team will be able to tell you whether Harry will be able to maintain that level of performance for the next 12 months.
We can't afford to just have. I don't think, personally, well, my opinion, we can't afford just to have him as the as the lone striker.
But to throw another thing into the ring, talking about finances, the very last Zoom meeting I was in, Donna Maria Cohen was on, and we were talking about community issues. But one thing that cropped up that was subsequently clarified with her was the statement that it is projected that the club will lose £200 million in the financial year up until July 2021. And the specific quote, I ought to read it for clarification. Due to the significance of income from match day, conferencing and third-party live events such as concerts and other sports, our estimated revenue loss, including broadcast rebates, may exceed 200 million for the period to June 2021. Now, clearly, that has a massive impact on what you are going to be able to spend on transfers this year.
Yeah. But I guess that affects every other club as well, because they're all affected by the same crisis, aren't
they? Unless you're Man City or Chelsea, who've got the...
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Now the FFP is dead in the water,
FFP is dead in the water, yeah. That's always been dead in the water.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
Clubs that have got big money.
You're right.
That's never been the case. Never been properly. Never will be.
No.
So
Chelsea will carry on buying, and Man City will carry on buying.
And it's interesting. I mean, just before we move on, it's interesting that Chelsea, everyone, at the beginning of last season, everyone was praising Chelsea, or beginning of this season, everyone was praising Chelsea because all of a sudden they were bringing through youth players, all these players that they'd had out on loan, etc., and everything like that. And this was a turn of a new type of Chelsea, how they were going to manage and how they were going to start to encourage youth players to bring the youth players through and all that sort of malarkey. And as soon as their ban was overturned in January, they bought a player, on a pre-contract, and they've not stopped buying since then. And I happen to know someone that is involved in Chelsea, and I had a conversation with him a little while back. And they've like Pete, what you said about the academy, where within our setup, we say like we've got some players that are that could do a job at academy level. They've got that as well, and we've seen some of those players. But because of the nature of the beast, because of the structure that they have there and everything, the expectation is for them to buy. It's not to bring players through. The expectation is for them to buy and to buy big. And because there's an expectation for them to buy big, that's why they have to buy big. Not because they haven't got good enough quality players already on their books, but because there's an expectation, because of the nature of the beast, the owner, and they've got lots of money and all that sort of crap. That's why they go out and buy players for 70 million or whatever, because there's an expectation that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I watch a lot of the under-23s because they based and play at Stevenage, and Loftus-Cheek and Mason Mount, two of the best players I've seen at that level for 10 years.
Yeah, brilliant players.
Absolutely phenomenal players.
As
you say, it was just for sake of expediency that they introduced those players at the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
it's interesting that Mount played the other day in the game I think I was watching, and he'd basically gone off the radar for about 3, 4, 5, 6 months. He'd hardly played at all, and certainly hadn't scored. But he had a great start to the season.
They had a brilliant youth team, just annihilated everyone, didn't they? So just needed someone that was going to blood them in slowly and get them players playing, and then end up with a good
but they won't, like, their path's going to be blocked again now, because they're going to they've had a few players come through, but they're going to kind of revert like predominantly to their old model of buying players in that they need. So
interesting to know how many players they've still got out on loan.
There's loads.
I don't know if anyone's got a track of that. I don't even think Chelsea have a track of how many players they've got out.
That's right.
People just turn up and say, "Don't you realise you're still paying me? I've been on your books for like 5 years. I've been in Belgium. We should try that." Just turn up at their training ground and say, "Like, you haven't paid me for like 6 years. I need my money." Anyway, moving on, because we're quite far into the show, and we brought Pete on. So, Pete, we just have a few minutes really just to touch on what the Supporters Trust has been up to. Certainly, with the lockdown and with this testing time, and I think we're going to be one of the clubs, I think, that are potentially going to be trialing having fans returning to the stadium if rumours are to be believed. So, just give us a little bit of, fill us in as to what's happening, what you can tell us from the Trust's perspective.
Okay. Things have gone a little bit quiet as far as my role in the Trust. I'm secretary, so I'm company secretary. Okay. And what I also do is take a big lead on community matters. So things like local relationships with the Antwerp Arms, for example. I also sit on a committee that the club have been running for 4 years, since the stadium started development, which basically involves the business side. So the foundation, Tottenham Hotspur Foundation, the club, Mace, we're on it as well, and local councillors, local housing representatives, and the Supporters Trust, to talk about issues mainly around the development of the stadium and the impact that had on the local community, and also on match day issues relating to local community. So that's one of the roles that I've taken. So that's taken a little bit of a back seat. And most of the Trust work in the past 3 months has been involved in thinking about season tickets for next season, the costings, movement. So many people have asked for movement of their seats, not happy with where they're sitting, would like to move somewhere else. And also talking about how eventually we're going to get back inside a stadium. So to cut a very long story short, over the last 2